Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission meeting for May 25th, 2023. I'm so glad we have a forum this evening. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Dee, we need a roll call.
Marlene Newman. Here. Daniel Schlegel.
Here.
Dan DeSaller.
Here.
Matthew Seddon.
Here.
John Saunders.
Here.
Elizabeth Mitchell. Allison Chopra.
Here.
Bernard Cross.
Here.
Duncan Campbell. Kirsten Hawley. Ernesto Castaneda.
Here.
Chris Thurbaum.
Thanks, Dee. All right, I need approval for the minutes from our last meeting, April 27th.
So moved. Second.
Dee?
Marlene Newman. Yes. Daniel Schlegel.
Yes.
Sam DeSaller.
Yes.
Matthew Seddon.
Yes.
John Saunders.
Yes.
Allison Chopra.
Abstain.
Bernard Cross.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you, Dee. Okay, we're gonna,
Before we start, Chris Thurbaum has joined us, so mark him as present.
thank you, Gloria. So we're gonna do things a little different today. We're gonna do new business first, and we're gonna start out with the college and Walnut Corridor study. And Beth is here with us this evening to give us a presentation.
Okay, great. Do I use this thing? It's just for cats. Okay, great. I'm Beth Rosenbarger. I'm the Assistant Director of the Planning and Transportation Department. Thank you for inviting me to talk about the corridor study here. This is the College and Walnut Corridor Study, and this is the presentation I gave to City Council. So if you all want me to be briefer, I can cut stuff out. It depends on how much, okay. But I do have to talk about the why, and I won't talk about our approach, but I will say right now we're talking about what outcomes we want to achieve as a community, and ideas are welcome. You don't bring an umbrella to a brainstorm. So why are we conducting a corridor study of College and Walnut? Safety, accessibility, efficient use of public space, community goals, and it's actually a plan recommendation in some of our adopted community plans. The corridor study looks at College and Walnut from the bypass on the northern end to Allen Street on the southern end. In total, that's 4.5 miles of street, 2.25 on each street. And along that stretch, there are about 150 motor vehicle crashes a year. For that length of road, that is a high amount. And for those many vehicles, that is a high amount. We don't want to see in our community that many crashes, but especially we don't want to see fatal or serious injury crashes. Road design is a thing in our control that as a community that we can use design to reduce the probability of severe and fatal crashes in our community. This image is the Global Daycare Center and on Walnut and 15th, and if they have 2 fences, and in between the fences they have tractor tires. I'm meeting with them about why, but that is very interesting. We know now there is a traffic signal added, but this stretch of Walnut, this is looking south. I think people who live here would say it is very difficult to drive the speed limit there. People tend to go really quick down that hill. We want to improve safety. When we look at streets, we look at where are pedestrians more vulnerable, and that is where they have to interact with motor vehicles in intersections and separation along streets. This crossing distance for, where are we here, 11th and College is 60 feet. That's a very large crossing distance for a pedestrian. So when we can look at how can we facilitate motor vehicle traffic and reduce the probability of crashes with pedestrians, that's what we want to look at with design of the streets. Along the stretch, there's actually no contiguous sidewalk on any of the 4 sidewalk bits that is accessible. This is a section on North Walnut, and it looks like sidewalk in this picture. It's a dirt path in front of that house. So it is an inaccessible pedestrian network and incomplete. This is south of First Street on College. Those are just standing curbs, so someone using a wheelchair cannot navigate the space. And in some instances, you might say, but Beth, do they have access across the street? But across the street has no sidewalk, and then there's eventually a little bit of sidewalk, and then it actually just ends at the bridge to go over Dodds. Another thing, if you think about Hopscotch Coffee and living in Bryan Park, the shortest distance between the neighborhood and Hopscotch Coffee is inaccessible also on foot or for someone in a wheelchair or also on a bicycle. You can't go this way at all. It's pretty interesting. From the pandemic, we've seen we have been interested in using public space a little bit differently. We have these parklets around downtown, and this is an opportunity. Some people like the added outdoor seating. Some people do not like the added outdoor seating. And mostly what we hear that people agree on is the orange things are ugly. So you might like the seating. That's great. People tend to agree that it's ugly. So if we can decide as a community, do we want to add that into our street design permanently? Do we want to come up with a way to flexibly add it into our street design, or do we not want to have it? So this is an opportunity to answer some questions like that. Why are we doing this? Input from residents. This was identified in the transportation plan in 2019 as a key recommendation for a project, and we want to build on the goals of the comprehensive plan. The corridor study is 2.25 miles on each street. And when we say corridor or when we say street, sometimes people don't know all the things that are included in street. What is included are sidewalks, street trees, motor vehicle facilities, bicycle and scooter facilities, transit facilities, outdoor seating space, outdoor merchandising space, loading, unloading, deliveries, etc. That's all encompassed when we talk about this space. So we want to talk about all those things. And how does the design of the street support adjacent land uses? It's very interesting. I've been spending a lot of time on the corridor with people, and we can see how the street supports or doesn't support in different spaces. We will look at existing conditions along the corridor that can include motor vehicle volumes, motor vehicle speeds, crashes. We have a street tree inventory, how curb space is used, transit routes, sidewalk facilities, sidewalk accessibility, and bicycle facilities. So that's what we look at with existing conditions. Unfortunately, in the transportation world, it's very easy to count motor vehicles, and it's not very easy to count people. So we don't have pedestrian counts. And we actually do have bicycle counts on some of the streets, but because they're not automated in the same way. And so I think we have to take that into consideration when we can look at the existing conditions. This is sort of the layout of the study and what happens next. Analyze existing conditions. We adopted goals for the corridor study in the transportation plan. Those are part of it. There's time and space to add additional community goals. So what else is important to us that maybe didn't get included at that time? Then from there, develop conceptual designs. Conceptual designs are basically in different areas along the corridor. How wide would the sidewalk be? How many would there be on-street parking? Do we have a bike facility? How many travel lanes, etc.? It's mainly physically possible, but without having every detail of the design done. Then we evaluate the conceptual designs using our community goals as a rubric, and then move to adopt that conceptual design into the transportation plan. There is a do nothing option. It might be that we do this and as a community decide to not do something. I think at a minimum, we should look at making our sidewalks accessible. So that would be a possible project. These are the goals that were adopted into the transportation plan. Since you told me you want me to go fast, I can email you the presentation and you'll all read them later. Will you?
I remember this anyway.
Yeah, great. Involvement in this corridor study. That's a QR code if you want to pull up the website. You can sign up for email updates on the project. We would love for you to do that. We would love your help in telling more people about it. This is still very early in the study. Oh, is our little Zoom thing in the way though, or will it still work?
I could,
I don't think it'll work.
Let's see.
I could move it.
It'll work.
Oh, great. And we're inviting people right now to share feedback in different ways. Or right now, I guess it would be, it's more your experiences with the corridor. So if you go to the website, you can sign up for email updates. You can click on the thing that says share your perspective and fill out some of that. You want what?
I need that address again.
Oh. bloomington.in.gov/college and walnut. You can share your perspective on this Google form. You can sign up for an event called a Stroll and Discuss. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm actually adding a bunch of times on Saturday, June 3rd. So we're going to do back-to-back dynamic Saturday of walking the corridor all day. So if you check it right now, I'm actually, the two tomorrow aren't going to happen because nobody signed up. But if you check it tomorrow, there will be times for June 3rd. If you host a neighborhood group or something else, you can contact us and ask staff to come to your meeting. We would be happy to come to where you are and talk about this. And we want you to save the date for public meetings in June. Oh yeah, I say if you can't find a Stroll and Discuss time that works for you, let me know. I'm happy to schedule something. So public meetings in June are on Tuesday, June 13th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. They are on the handout. I gave you all two, and I can hand out more of these. And June 15th from 6 to 7:30, they'll both be here at City Hall. The first meeting is to talk about existing conditions, what's happening with the space, etc., or like people's experiences. The second meeting is to report back. So the consultants will take in a bunch of feedback from lots of people and then come up with some preliminary concepts to share and for us to use as a springboard moving forward. This whole thing isn't important, but what matters is we're at the beginning. So sometimes people are like, why didn't we know? I want you to know we are at the beginning right here. So it's a great time to talk about this. Okay, I'm gonna share one other thing. I have to stop sharing that part. I should share this whole printout with the commission or figure out a way to do it. We have this awesome SPIA fellow who did look into the history of College and Walnut becoming one-way streets. So that happened in 1956, and she spent a lot of time at the IU, oh my gosh, what's the general library called?
Wells.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Wells Library, doing all the newspaper on microfiche and read all these articles, and it was like a pretty interesting political drama, honestly. And I guess I should note, it's not that important, and we don't know what design of the streets we want to end up with. We want to focus on what outcomes we want as a community and evaluate the designs according to those outcomes. It's interesting to look at how the streets became how they are now. And a quick summary is a lame duck council in 1955 at their final December meeting voted to, on a recommendation from the Traffic Commission, to make the streets one way. A new council came in January 1956 and rescinded that resolution immediately and said, no, we're leaving the streets as two-way. According to her research in the articles, at the time, the business community did not want the streets to change. They were like, no, we just want them to stay the way they are. Eventually, the state got involved, and it seems Walnut Street was a state road at the time, and the state said, if you don't make your streets one way, we're pulling funding and we're removing all the on-street parking from Walnut or something. And so then business members eventually said, look, this is important for us to keep the state funding and this other stuff. We'll support, please do this. And then council voted sometime in like mid-1956, and they said, okay, and they became one-way streets. And I mean, they have been that way ever since, or that section of Walnut. And she put all these articles together. It's very interesting, and I was very impressed with her research. So it was an interesting history. And then that's all I'll do. We have some older photos that are fun and historic aerials, but be interested to hear from you all about this study.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brad. Questions?
What do you see the HPC's role in this, if any? Or is it just, you're just sharing it with all the committees?
Well, Gloria asked that I come because she thought you all would be very interested. I think I think I'm interested to know what role you all would like to have. We want more people to participate, and we want people to help share about this study too. So the streets are very important to the community. These are the gateway to Bloomington. They are the heart of downtown. So I just think the more people who can know and be involved, the better.
Yeah,
And I did share on my Facebook page already.
Thank you.
And I said, I do not want your opinions, don't post them on my page. Post them on the survey.
Yeah, can you post and be like, no comments allowed? Or
Yeah, I'll admonish appropriately.
Yeah, how many accidents were fatal and resulted in injury out of the 150?
I don't have it offhand, but it will be part of the existing conditions. I know of one recently. There were two fatal crashes. One at Kirkwood and Walnut within the last few years, and one at Walnut and 12th. But that is part of the Vision Zero goal, is no fatal or serious injury. So we'll have more info on that.
And is parking still a public use of public space in these plans? You listed a lot of uses of the public space, but not parking.
Oh, I thought I said parking when I talked about it.
You
well-
didn't, I just noticed.
Okay. No, we consider parking part of the study and a facet of the streets as well.
Right.
We also talk about considering different districts along, it's because of the length. There's no on-street parking up next to Miller Showers Park in that section. And then from 17th to, I don't know where it starts, 11th, there's some. So looking at the different districts and seeing where that most supports adjacent land use and maybe where it doesn't as much. It also stops south of, we don't have any south, both streets are different. South of 3rd and south of 2nd, depending on the one. Yeah, definitely. Sorry I missed it.
I think.
No, I was just interested in who's doing the study. Is it staff, or are you hiring a consultant, or?
Both. I do a lot of it. As in, our consultant firm is Tool Design Group, and they will lead the public meetings in June. And I say they do more of the deep analysis that is really helpful. So looking into the crash data and which ones are fatal, which ones are serious injury, where we see repeat crash locations a lot, kind of more of that data analysis. And I would say we do a lot of the engagement and this part.
Can I let it just talk?
Oh.
Anyways, I think this is a great study. I think it has a lot to do with the Historic Preservation Commission, in the sense that in 1955 there was a huge historic, sort of change in the way people thought about trees and cars and people, and it was a move toward modernism. Now, today, that sort of has reversed in a way, and the idea of having these immensely fast streets running through the town, or they're sort of against or opposed to developing retail facilities. And so I think it's a really interesting study, especially to be happening now, and I think bringing it to this commission is great. And we might even think about having some presentation about this history, because I since we all have different backgrounds, we don't necessarily know this history, or everybody doesn't know this history. And the other thing, I know everything's serious with these kinds of studies, but there's a TED Talk that's really great, and it's a lot of fun. The guy's from Texas, his name is Jason Roberts, you may be familiar with him, and it's called A Better Block, and I can send you the link, but it's really hysterical. It's really funny the way he approaches it, and it's a lot, in a way, it's a lot more approachable than the sort of dry elements that usually pertain to this kind of study. And a lot of the things that you were talking about, they address here in a very ad hoc way, and it was just, the outcome was great, and it just, I think it would loosen up the way people think about this a little bit, so, but it's a TED Talk, and he did several of them, but there's, first one, I think, it was really good, and he did other ones, and they're all funny, and great, so that's what I'd say, and I applaud your bravery.
Thank you, Beth, for the presentation. It's great that we are addressing the corridor north-south. Are we going to talk about addressing connectivity east-west through the corridor? Is that going to be part of the study?
Can you tell me more about what you're picturing?
Yeah, specifically when you look at the corridor, like south of, say, Allen Street, for example. We have the issue with, I think there's a dilapidated culvert, I think it is, right, that connects the B-line.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about bicycles, pedestrian crossing. There's a crossing that allows pedestrians from Bryant Park across to connect to the B-line.
Yeah.
I would think that's part of the scope of work. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it can involve that. And also, it makes sense to have sometimes it might be like, this is a specific design for here, and here are recommendations as we connect to this space. So I think there's room for that. And it definitely will include that intersection of Allen and Walnut specifically. But on a stroll and discuss earlier this week, we talked about how confusing that bridge is, some people said, because it says it's closed, but you are allowed to walk and bike on it, but it is closed to driving. And so it's kind of nice that there aren't cars on it for walking and biking, but it's not legible. It's not we're not communicating what is allowed really there.
I think maybe this is a great opportunity to, instead of having cars over it, maybe take over it for pedestrians, for example.
That little bridge.
Yeah, to emphasize the crossing as pedestrians, which is pretty dangerous. I cross that a lot.
Yeah.
And then maybe connect it through the B-line. You know, maybe make it a destination as opposed to a connection. And then also, just lastly, the connectivity, I think it's Patterson. Grimes turns into Patterson, right? South of that, there is no more connectivity to the west until you hit Winslow, right? But the corridor doesn't go all the way further down. So I don't know, maybe we're getting into the weeds here, but.
We thought this was the most we could bite off with with this phase of a corridor study. But we do recommend, like it is recommended in the transportation plan, to look at that section as well. So I think, yes, that is, no, but it's important. So it's great to think about and see how that will work together in the future too. But a lot of potential in that space. I don't think the street is supporting it that much when you go farther south too.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any more questions? No?
Thank you for your time.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Thanks
hosting.
for
Thank you,
inviting
Beth.
me. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks Beth again for coming this evening. Okay, let's move on. Number B on our new business is we made a proposal a while back ago of establishing a subcommittee to talk about the roofing materials that are coming around. We had a petitioner a while back ago want to do something a little bit different. So, I would like for us to talk about if we have people that would be interested in signing up and us meeting together and talking about different materials and coming back to the commission and presenting it to them. Yes.
What would the goal or the end product of this
I think the
subcommittee
end
be?
product would be to have recommendations of materials that would be acceptable to the commission.
Okay, and how would that affect people who live in historic districts who have their own bylaws and their own so I'm not finding the word, I apologize, but.
That's okay. I think that most of the districts are allowing most any kind of roofing at this point.
Okay,
And I think, so like what we had last time where we had a composite roofing
right,
versus
right.
asphalt roofing.
So this could inform them as well as far as
Right.
what we maybe
What we would
recommend.
consider as recommendation. If that's okay. So, do we have any volunteers? Besides me. I mean, I'll be happy to help.
Whose idea was this?
Marlene,
Mine.
if you
Oh,
want
okay.
to use the raise hand feature so we can clearly see you, if you want to volunteer, or if you want to say hi, because I just saw you right now.
I would like to volunteer for the committee, okay. But I don't know where the raised hand is at the moment. That's what, being so ridiculous.
You're good, thank you.
Yeah, I definitely would like, an architect or two with this, because you guys are much more familiar with the type of materials that are coming down the pipe that, I mean, I've done stuff in the past, but nowhere near what's happening in today's world. And maybe we can get some samples from some of the companies that we can look at as well.
I'd be happy to help out, but not before 1st of August. So it depends on
I'm good with that.
when.
Okay, so we'll plan to meet in
So the
August.
subcommittee, there's that committee. Yeah.
Okay,
I
so,
think it's important, I don't have strong feelings about roofing materials. I would love you guys to tell me what I should worry about.
Yeah, please.
So you got
We need
myself,
odd
Sam,
number.
Matthew.
Doesn't
No,
matter.
not Matthew.
No, not Matthew. All right, Matthew.
I don't trust your judgment.
Ernesto. Daniel? Okay.
if the roof tiles were below ground, it would be different.
That would be
And Bernard, did you want to purchase? Okay, just check. Thank you. All right, so we've got that taken care of.
How many people do we have?
And we've got,
We have John, Marlene, Sam, Daniel,
Ernesto?
you're just, and Ernesto.
yeah, five.
Is that okay?
You want to join?
Gosh, no.
Okay.
No.
So, yeah, and I will talk to legal later to just get a
Right.
refresher on subcommittee meeting
Right.
rules, because they have to be public meetings as well and have to be posted, but we'll cross that bridge
So
when we
maybe
get
we'll
to it.
cut that down to 3. Make it a little bit easier. But very good. We'll start in August to give everybody a chance to get through, maybe mid of August or something like that.
There is a benefit to having 3. Is
Yes,
that
the
something we
benefit
want to
of having
consider?
3 is that we don't have to post it and we can meet.
Whenever.
With 5, we have to post it, it has to be.
Or just a thought, you want to have that additional administrative duty on our already taxed staff and administrators.
We'll talk, yeah, we
Okay.
can meet
We'll
later
figure it
about
out. We'll figure it out.
figuring it out. It's not, that type of issue is not a huge problem, but thank you so much for taking it
All
into
adds up,
consideration.
my friend.
Yes. Thank you.
All right,
Okay.
so let's move on to letter C, and that is Allison.
Yes, and I thank you, Mr. Chair, for adding this to the agenda. I know you didn't have to do that.
Well, we did the last 2 agendas.
I know. Well, and a case in point, right? Did we have a quorum the last 2 times?
One time we did, the second time we did.
Okay.
So
Well, I had parental duties, and for one of them, I had to go to, I chose to go to a track meet of my son's, and then I was on vacation last meeting. So, I would like to propose and make a motion that we eliminate the hybrid portion format for our meetings. We have had attendance issues in the past, and I don't think that it's fair when we have 9 commissioners, and we only need a quorum, which is 5, to be here and present for hybrid, but we consistently see physically the same people and consistently do not see some people at all. And there's no reason not to meet in person any longer. We sometimes actually look at things that you might want to feel or touch before considering it. But that roofing material would be a good case in point. So I just wanted to open up that discussion. I know I've talked about it, or I guess grumbled about it in the past. And I just wanted to get that motion on the table that we eliminate the hybrid. Now, for the public, I'd love for public to be able to join hybrid. But in order to have a quorum and in order for folks to participate, I want commissioners, not advisory members either, but commissioners, voting commissioners, to be here in person.
Okay, good, Allison. So we'll open this up for discussion. And,
and I just wanted to back up. There was a situation where it was half an hour before the meeting was supposed to begin. There 5 people could come. I said that I could come in person. I was sick. You guys, is anybody here? I was really sick. And I felt terrible that if I didn't come, things weren't going to get accomplished. And I don't think that people should be put in that position when we have people appearing by Zoom who are clearly available but aren't coming to the meeting. I mean, it was a very bad position to be in, and I don't want that for anyone here either.
yeah, I agree.
So I think that's a good example of why this isn't working as well as we would like it to.
Yeah, exactly. And not everybody has the same commitments as you and I do to make these meetings. So let's open up for discussion. Allison, why don't you make us a motion that we can discuss?
Oh, I think
Because we didn't do we get a second?
Second.
Okay. So now we can have a discussion. All right, Matthew?
I was just gonna ask real quick, I don't think, thinking back through this, I have seen, I believe, every commissioner at this point come to an in-person meeting, which suggests to me, I'm just exploring, is there anybody who feels they have a health condition that they are still legitimately worried about that? And I'm thinking, Gloria, do you remember? I think we have at least seen every voting commissioner in person at least once.
We have.
So like Elizabeth, and we've seen Marlene here, and we've seen you here. So to me, I think then that's entirely reasonable, because I have also felt like you in your position where I knew we barely had 5 in person. One was me, and oh man, you know, I had a terrible conflict and that was hard to juggle because I knew if I didn't make it, that was it for the petitioners, you know, and so I'm honestly in favor of it. I'd happily live with that.
Okay. Ernesto?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a medical doctor, but people have different reasons why not, but they prefer to do this over Zoom.
Well, and bear in mind that our people online, commissioners online, they can't vote.
Oh, they can vote.
Oh, they
but
can vote?
Yes, they can vote and their vote counts. However, the voting commissioners online can vote and their vote counts. However, they do not count for a quorum.
Oh, I see.
And if we lose physical quorum and there's still people online, they cannot even speak. The meeting can continue, there can be no votes, but the people online cannot even comment. And just as a reminder, we are tied to, and I think Colleen, you might be able to help clarify any doubts, but we are tied to state statute. So these are not policies coming from Bloomington, they're coming from way above us. And the other thing is, currently, commissioners who are on, just for a little bit more context, in case there are any doubts or questions later, commissioners who are online can only be online twice in a row. And that is something that we as staff need to keep better track of.
didn't have any.
Yeah, so commissioners who are online can be online twice in a row for an emergency. The idea of the state is really closer to what, Allison, you're envisioning, where a quorum can only be had in person. And the online system is basically sort of an emergency valve for when a commissioner, for extraordinary circumstances. It should never be used as a day-to-day or normal mechanism for voting commission members.
And then there's also a mechanism if we have a commissioner that doesn't show for how many sessions?
So, I believe you're correct, yes. So if a commissioner does not show at all for, yes, I believe, Allison, you're correct, it's 3 meetings or more, they can be removed. This, I think, was at the common council level, but yes, this is being a commissioner is a huge responsibility, whether you are a voting member, or whether you are advisory member. Your words and your presence has a profound impact on the landscape and on the lives of the people around you. So although this is something that you are donating your time to do, it is a very weighty responsibility that you are taking on for all the constituents around you. I'll let you keep talking.
Thank you, well, no, thank you, Gloria, it really helps. Okay, Daniel, do you have any comments?
Yeah,
Ernesto?
I was just saying that I have no medical education to make a opinion necessarily about why people doesn't show up for different reasons. It could be medical, I don't know. So I just leave it to that. I have no opinion more than that. Thank you.
Allison? Anything additional?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Was there any questions?
Bernard?
So I'm thinking that this hybrid format came in for COVID.
After COVID.
Well, as a result of COVID, and we're post COVID now,
Yes.
right? So I'm thinking if it was brought as a COVID mitigation measure, then we should revert to what was before. Now, I do take the point that people have medical issues, but like in every other sphere, if you have a personal issue that prevents you from doing something, you would excuse yourself until you have dealt with that issue, and then you can rejoin. I don't see why any attendance at or being a member of the commission should be any different. So.
Oh, are you done?
Yes, yes,
You
I'm
were. I did want to ask. Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me get Daniel.
Oh, sure, of course.
Sorry.
It was an omitted question. Usually the judge lets you.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
The only thing I was going to say is I'm not really opposed to it either. I just didn't know some days it feels like this room gets a little cramped when we get a lot more people. And I have no idea on rooms, Gloria, if there's bigger rooms here, if we have all our commissioners. It's just the chambers. Okay. It just feels like that's a huge job.
Why can't we have that?
Yeah.
So that was my only comment or concern, was just maybe a slightly larger room if we're going to have all the commissioners on a regular, plus a lot of public, especially for something where there would be a lot of input. So.
You can still wear a mask. You can bring your oxygen tank.
May I, legal, there are many, I'll just say, many commissions and groups within the city that have moved away from the hybrid as well, right? I mean, we're sort of in the we're in the minority.
There's still some that are meeting hybrid as well, but yeah, for the most part, at least the ones I have been seeing have been doing primarily in person.
Okay, I think that's important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think maybe, yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I don't think that the pandemic is over per se, but I don't think the spread of COVID is necessarily over. There are like 108,000 people dying every year from this still. So, and the government has just offered another round of vaccinations for people who are 65 and over. So I think there is some sort of folly in thinking that it's completely over. the other hand, I think that I've said this before, that I think it's a great technology, and I think that you can leverage a lot of things. And for me, you know, during this, I took a different kind of a job where I traveled more. And, you know, it was, and when I was given or appointed, you know, it was 100% hybrid, there was nothing else. So, you know, and I also, you know, have had a couple of health issues recently that make it impossible for me to go there. But, you know, it's like just bizarre things that happened in the last month. But anyways, so you know, I think in a way it's very, you know, in a way it's retrograde to move it to no, absolutely no, hybrid meetings. Because I think, I mean, I've said this before, that when I was teaching, everybody thought it was terrible that you could never teach a design studio remotely, and it turned out that it was really good, because you could bring in people from all across the country and indeed all across the world to speak to students. And after the imperative of teaching remotely ended, that was not available. The students were not given that opportunity to meet people from Chicago and from New York and from San Francisco and LA and Atlanta and Chicago, you know, all at Boston, all over the place. And so in a way, you know, we talk about having things like, you know, continuing education and all those sorts of things, which kind of would work better, or in some ways be a little bit more interesting and engaging if we were able to leverage this. And I don't know, I think that in some ways that we're losing sight of an opportunity and we aren't leveraging it. And I think people do have health problems, and they think that having it there and in your back pocket, like you could have, is a good thing. But that's, I can see that I'm in the minority, but I really, I think there's a lot of sort of backward looking in a way, not moving forward and not looking to the potential for the future.
Okay. Thank you, Maria.
Industries, that's all.
Right. Sam? Oh, sorry.
I do believe my hand was up.
I know, I get to go.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to comment that the issue is not this commission moving backwards. I mean, it's the state law. There's a state law that we have to operate underneath, and
I'm not saying that. I understand.
ma'am, there is absolutely no reason to argue with me when I'm making a comment. Thank you.
Leveraging the technology.
What is she doing?
is all I'm saying. I'm not talking about.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm making my own personal comment. We're not going to do that. Thank you. My comment, which is not an argument, is that it is not this commission's fault that the hybrid meetings is not working. It's an issue of state law that we have to work within. And that's what I would like to say. Thank you.
Can I just
Hang
say
on.
one-
No, you cannot. No, you cannot do that. That's
Hang on one
completely
minute.
out of line. That's not how you conduct a
Law
meeting.
doesn't say that you can't have hybrid meetings. It says that commissioners can't be in two at the same time. You know, two length, one, you know, Allison, I have.
How about you show your ass up and find out what it feels
Hang
like?
on, guys. Let's
No,
just
I
get,
have a new point at the end of, and I have new business to add as well.
okay,
Okay.
hang on, Marty, we'll get back to you.
Yep.
Sam?
First, I would like to admonish my fellow commissioners. I would really appreciate it if people took turns and respected the chair and were civil about this, and let people say their piece, and we can move on.
Right. Agree.
I'm not asking for agreement, I'm trying to say my piece. Secondly, I think a lot of this is covered by state statute. We just need to adhere to state statute. I think having the hybrid meetings as a safety valve is not a bad thing. It's already regulated by state law. I think the more important thing that this agenda item brings up for me is commissioner attendance in general. I think there are commissioners, I just did a tally of when it was brought up for the year previous, and I haven't updated it, and it's, we've been waiting to talk about this probably 6-8 months now, so I don't have all the data. But there are maybe 3 commissioners who are here most all the time. John is here like every single time. He's the only one with perfect attendance. And Elizabeth is a close second. But we have at least 2 voting commissioners who would be out based on just that last year. And we have a majority who are barely here half the time. So I would say, if you want to look at the attendance records and you can't make it on Thursdays, maybe consider being an advisory member or consider stepping down from the commission such that people who have the space in their lives to do this can do this. It's a service to the community. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of dedication. And we're wasting a lot of people's time. And people have other things to do. We're not here for fun. We're here because we want to make our city a better place. So if you can't be here on Friday, if you don't read the packet before you come, if you don't respect the chair, if you don't pay attention to the staff presentation, consider stepping down. I have enjoyed being on this commission for, I think, over 15 years. It's been a minute. And the last couple of years, it's become more contentious. And I realize we have to deal with contentious issues, but I would encourage us to do so in a civil and measured way. Thank you.
I tend to agree with Sam on a lot of this because it is a commission attendance. It's not because of the hybrid situation, because only 2 commissioners can do that. All the commissioners should be here at all our meetings. So I think the way we have it right now is okay, because that way at least we have the commissioners that can't make it, can be online. But I really would like to figure out a way that we know ahead of time that who will be here and who will not be here on our Thursday evening meetings. And as Sam said, it's a real commitment to come here on our meetings and to participate. So that's my 2 cents. So what would you guys like to do?
Well, there's a motion and a second.
So we vote?
Let's take
I call the question.
Yep, Gloria?
Okay, just to clarify, you're voting on eliminating hybrid for voting commissioners, but not for staff, advisory, or the public.
That's correct.
Just wanted to make sure that's all, okay. And Dee's the one who, Dee?
Dee? Where's Dee?
Dee?
I think she's chat GPT.
If you want to give me the list.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll take roll call then.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Hello?
we can hear you now.
Okay, I don't know what happened. Okay, Marlene Newman,
No.
Daniel Slagle,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
No.
Matthew Seddon,
Yes.
John Saunders,
No.
Allison Chopra,
Yes.
Bernard Cross,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right. Thank you, Dee. Thank you. So we will now have
What about, did Daniel vote or the rest of them?
Daniel?
No.
Did she call?
Oh,
you?
you're.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, Vanessa's not a voting member.
Okay.
Okay, very good. So it carries, and we will see everybody at our next meeting. Thank you. All right, let's move on to COA staff review.
Okay, let me, sorry,
Okay.
organize my page here. So, staff review, starting with COA 23-30, the petitioner Veronica Baradiner at 909 East University Street requested the removal of 5 trees on her property for different reasons. So the staff approved the removal of 4 trees that were located within the property, as these were causing damage to the fence and the retention wall. However, staff did not approve the removal of a walnut tree as it was located in the alleyway, which is public land and therefore not within her right to remove, and instead directed the petitioner to the city arborist in order to fill out their form. Sorry, I'm gonna scroll very quickly, so don't, oh wait, no, I just have to click on this. Okay, and COA 23-33, address is 613 West 4th Street. The petitioner, Sandra Washburn, was requesting the replacement of 10 windows. I have the neighborhood comments. I actually sent this to the neighborhood. Sandy, as you may already know, your request hits 2 areas covered in our Greater Prospect Hill design guidelines: removal of original materials and changing to the public way facades. Just as a reminder, design review committee approval is not technically needed, which can be handled by staff. However, members of the committee can choose to support, not support, abstain, etc. And speaking only for myself, I think these changes make sense and are in keeping with a similar replacement made by the other property owners, as you have pointed out. So the Historic Preservation Commission had already approved a window change for the next door neighbor, and the owners here were applying for the exact same window type. So staff did approve this. In the future, staff is gonna just push every window case, even in the Greater Prospect Hill, to the Historic Preservation Commission. But however, the windows did comply with the fenestration size, material, and shape. The neighborhood subcommittee was not opposed, and the property owner used the same window template design as the next door neighbors, which had been approved by the HPC. So I wanna, because this is windows, they used the Pella Architect Series traditional wood double hung windows, which had been approved by the HPC for their neighbors and so these are photos of the property. What you see there with the 2x2 is the storm window. The actual windows are 1x1 over 1. And yes, so this is the location. And with that, there was another application that had been sent for the Greater Prospect Hill Historic District for the building of a small wall, but it turns out that after reviewing the guidelines and talking to legal in the neighborhood, that it didn't even need to a certificate of appropriateness due to the nature of work being done. So originally it was going to have 3, but then it turns out that it was 2. And with that, I leave it to the Historic Preservation Commission.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so let's move on to 917 North Fairview, COA 23-29.
Okay, so I'm going to give a very quick overview of this case. We've already been looking at it for a while, but as a refresher to the commissioners and to commissioners who may have not seen this case before, but the petitioners are proposing an ADU behind the existing structure that has different and creative uses of materials for ecological reasons and using tiny space principles for their house, or tiny house principles. Staff has been recommending that the petitioner work with the HPC to find a creative solution, and right now staff is going to leave this one to the HPC, although staff feels much calmer, by staff I mean myself, feels much calmer that the petitioner has been working actively with their neighbors, with the neighborhood association, so not just in the neighborhood subcommittee, their actual nearby neighbors with the HPC, and they have been listening to recommendations and actively implementing them. However, it's going to have to be the HPC's determination whether these changes constitute enough compliance to create an experimental structure within a historic district. So with this, I'm actually going to hand it over to the petitioners so that they can give a short presentation of the more recent changes based on a series of meetings and site visits with the neighborhood and with some of the commission members.
Thank you, Gloria. So I'm Jake, that's Danny. Danny is the owner of the property and the principal designer. I collaborated with him on the design. So this is the third iteration essentially. The first one was very preliminary, just to even just introduce you to the idea. The second one was last meeting where there was no quorum. And in between that last meeting and the current meeting, we have had plenty of time to actually meet with the neighbors, show them that full fleshed out second iteration, and now we've got a radically changed third iteration. And so what I'll be doing is I'll be doing a quick overview of the project, and then showing some of the changes we specifically made from the second iteration, which was when there was no quorum, to the current one. We were going to go through, I believe neighbors will have a chance to speak, but we have, so I've got two quick letters from the immediately adjacent neighbors, both strongly supporting. These were sent to Gloria and staff so that you should have them all on record. Ecstatic support from the oblique neighbor, actually, no, excuse me, that's the immediately to the north. And then a welcoming support from the catty-corner neighbor. We've met with the others. Go ahead.
I spoke to all well, there's 5 contiguous that are, or budding is the term, trying to like learn these languages we go. 3 had verbal okays with it, 2 letters, one's gonna join via Zoom to give their part, and the other 2 are rentals. One's an Airbnb rental, so that's super transient, and the other one is rental. I spoke to them, but they weren't interested in pursuing anything else. That's a recommendation from meeting with the neighbors in general, is to just meet everybody that was touching me.
Now, I'm not totally sure. Gloria sent out a packet. I believe the packet might have the previous iteration, but the link she sent out, there was a link. Oh, okay, we're good. Yeah, no, so we're good. Yeah. So yeah, so if you want to see the previous design, feel free, but I'm presenting the new design. So this is a site plan. You can see a couple things worth noting. To the east is the historic house. To the west is the proposed ADU, and a few things that are probably worth noting is the topography. So as you walk from the north to the south on Fairview, you are going uphill at quite a drastic elevation. And similarly, if you walk down the alleyway that separates the north site from our site, you are also going uphill. So if you're going from the east to the west. So there's quite a bit of topographical change. We'll address that, but you can see, yes, the proposed ADU and the existing historic house, those will come up in renderings. And if we look at the first, Gloria, how do I?
Because it was on the, sorry, it was on Zoom, not on.
So here's an elevation that would be looking, it's an east elevation, we're looking to the west from the back porch of the historic structure. This is nice because it shows the 3 principal parts of the ADU, the proposed ADU. First, which Daniel pointed out, is the tiny home. So this is a new tiny home. Danny is a prolific builder of tiny homes. So we had 2 to pull from. So the first one we showed you, this is a different one. We'll talk about the comparison to the original. So there's a different tiny home that he's already built. It's already been fabricated. The carbon costs have already been sunk. To the north of that is a cob structure, also greatly reduced. Cob being a fully natural earthen material that would be harvested on site. So again, low embodied carbon. And it's sitting atop a CMU, but it will be stuccoed CMU garage, which is built kind of into that topographical change. So again, if you were to keep walking towards this house and beyond, as you'll see in some of the pictures, the elevation, the topography actually continues to go up. And so there would be 2 bedrooms in this proposed ADU, because we want to increase density that's walkable to downtown. One would be in the tiny home, which is wood clad, and the other would be in the stuccoed basement, and you can see egress. There's a little window for egress and a well. And then you've got a garage or workshop area facing the alleyway, and then the cob structure would be a communal shared living space. Just so we can keep looking at all the different angles, here's the north elevation. So this is if you're in the alleyway, walking into the garage. We've added some steps to go up that grade into the backyard, and then the steps then curve around the structure to that tiny house. Here it is looking from the property to the west. We're going to talk about ways we are proposing to mitigate that elevation if we wanted to, if the committee wanted. But again, you can see that we're using the same wood as on the tiny home. And again, you see the cob in the kind of speckling, and then the plain white is the stuccoed concrete block. And then here is the south elevation, where you see kind of entrance and egress. Really quickly, this is, and we're going to talk about building heights, but this is a quick kind of cut showing the facades and the relative heights. So you see that there is a 2-foot grade increase, and you also see that the proposed ADU is indeed 11 inches taller than the existing historic structure. We'll talk about why. We think that's an okay sacrifice. But so you've got a 2-foot grade change and an 11-inch increase over the existing structure. Just so you guys, if you're not used to seeing facades or renders, here's some renders that kind of show what it looks like in perspective as a human might see it. This is being in the backyard, looking kind of towards the alley, you're looking northwest here. Here you are looking directly west, standing in the backyard. Here you are in the alleyway. I will say that on almost all the renders, we've done them to human height. This one got away from us. You'd be floating a few feet off the ground for this view. But the rest should be at human height on that elevation. And then here is from the west, looking to the east. And then most importantly, showing it in conjunction with the neighboring houses and the historic house. If you're standing on Fairview, you don't see it. So if you're standing on the street looking at the historic house, you will not be able to see the new ADU. If you are kind of walking uphill, so north to south, and you're looking down that alleyway, you see Danny's historic house kind of coming out to the left. You see the other neighbor to the north who have ecstatic support for this project. And if you're looking down the alleyway, you see the proposed ADU entering that alleyway. And then if you're kind of standing on the alleyway looking east, down at the historic homes, the ADU is the nearest structure. So that's just kind of give us some bearings. And then this is, if you're in the neighbor to the south, this is what it looks like, although there's actually quite a bit of plantings in the way. But this kind of gives you, again, a sense of it is a little bit taller for reasons we'll talk about. I've already sent you a lot of language on why we think this fits the neighborhood, and in that language I specifically quote the official Bloomington report on what makes this neighborhood historic, which is the working class kind of mentality, the making do with existing materials, the practicality of it, and the eclectic design, there being no one dominant style in the neighborhood. And especially Danny's house, which is a hodgepodge of different decades and styles. Which we think it makes sense to work with that rather than try to superimpose one style that doesn't actually exist or dominate the neighborhood. And then of course, we're trying to increase density and living space within walkable distance to downtown. We are reusing materials that have already been built into a structure with the tiny homes. And we are using on-site materials that are fully natural, no toxins, can be perfectly recyclable into cob. We were happy to talk about style and our thought, but this is from the Neighborhood Historic Commission that submitted. This is based on the previous design, so the design has only gotten smaller since then, but in the previous talks with them, we worked a lot with Thomas and Lucy, and I will say that they believe that indeed, as per our argument, it fits the eclectic historic nature of the area. However, they did raise some issues that we wanted to specifically address from the second iteration to this new third iteration. So I'm going to quickly go through and say what we changed to meet neighborhood concerns and questions. And so the questions that were not formally submitted involve, they wanted to know the footprint comparison. How does
this came out there like our meeting together.
So this is just an informal meeting. They want to know the footprint comparison, and they wanted some more fenestration, some more visual interest to the west. And then in the official critique, which I believe you all have access to, they wanted to know about the visibility of that foundation height. We're going to talk about what we're doing to deal with that. The fenestration pattern, and the overall building height. So we're going to really quickly, in the simplest possible terms, address those one-on-one. So here they are in that official document: foundation height, fenestration patterns, and building height. Really quickly, so this is just a simple block of, like, if this is what it looks like if you're looking head on to the old tiny house and the new tiny house. So we've dropped it over a foot and a half. So the old tiny house that we proposed was 12 feet. The new tiny house in height is 10.5. That's an east elevation. And then the cob and basement, the two-story structure, we've dropped it almost 3 feet. In fact, just over 3 feet. So again, it'd be cob on top, basement, stucco basement on bottom. So we're trying to address, you can also see we've dropped the overhangs and made the roof structure significantly smaller. Height, we are still 11 inches taller than the building. Why? One, the building is preposterous. It is 7'1" ceilings. So
That's the main house.
So Danny and I are both 6 feet tall. The people pochade in there, the entourage, as you'd say, are 6 feet tall with their arms extended. That's what it's like to be in Danny's house. We believe that,
about here.
yeah, so it's right about there. Historic preservation is, we want to respect the old house, but, Marines, now on modern ships don't, it's not the same. If you're a Marine in a modern ship, you expect ceilings taller than the 5 feet they used to be in the British Navy during Napoleon's time. We kind of like more space in our ceilings, and we're trying to make dignified buildings for people to live in, right? We don't want it to be cramped, so we think a little bit of extra head height is worth the 11 inches that we come in over the existing structure. And again, as you can see in the foundations, there is a 2-foot grade change, which also adds to that change in height. And then the footprint really quickly, again, this is the actual site plan and then an overlay. So the ADU footprint versus the historic house footprint, and then we fit the ADU footprint inside the historic house. Both structures have a basement. So the footprint is pretty representative of the actual livable space. I'm gonna let Danny talk about fenestration and the visible whatever.
So yeah, the height and the fenestration stuff, that was like, when we met as a group, I was trying to game through how to get down, and we were talking about cutting blocks off and pulling the tiny house inside them and setting on ledger boards. It was a lot of kind of expensive, difficult things. And then I realized that my other tiny house is it's actually shorter than that. That's what's on here. But that saved us over the 2 block that we could have got if I cut it out, and then all the windows are lined. They're actually, this thing has more regular windows than my house now. And it kind of plays off, there's a lot of horizontal, you can go to my house shots. So, well, there's a tiny home, just a quick, what it looks in situ. It's also the same exact siding, the car siding, 6-inch wide. These are the windows of my house. So if you start talking about fenestration.
His historic house.
Yeah. There's a lot of horizontal breaks. And there's these kind of different fenestrations across. I think I lost count at 7 or 8 different styles of window. And then the doors are also the same way. 4 different types of light doors. 3 of them actually closer, or 2 of them closer to what the snail design is, which is the bar window up, bar to the side. So yeah, this it kind of is a happenstance that it plays with these tall windows, and then my neighbor has tall windows. But just gives you an idea of this is the structure we're talking about.
And there's more pictures in your packet to show this structure from different angles.
And the exposed foundation. So the first move I did to kind of start fixing this is I pulled the staircase across and laid it down to the sides. We covered more of the block there. And then I proposed just greening that wall, which is what I have on the front of my house already. I did that with antique bar into the block, and then did all the ceiling and so forth. But I grew a native prairie rose. That's actually the only native climbing rose. So if you all want native flowers, I've got a lot of cuttings that are ready, and they're very hard to find. But then this is something I talked to the neighbors too. We kind of just stayed on height really, and windows. Tom was interested in windows, and then Tom and Lucy, me were talking more about height. But I could propose a similar thing on the west side, where it's raised beds, breaking up that facade, stepping it down. There can be plantings there as well. I did super grammatically just to give that sense of an idea. And this is the other angle that we keep everything is presented from low in the front because that's most dramatic. This is the opposite angle, and we all met as a group up here. And there's even said at one point that's it feels way less bad from up here. And it's because this alley is cut very deeply, very quickly. This kind of exacerbating this. So I can do more aggressive backfill. But here's my neighbor's garden that's about 20 feet away from the foundation wall. It's the elevation changes are drastic, mostly because there's a cut here that could be an alley, is not used as one. There's a cut here, and then they have 2 lots, and they just level them off. So I think there's a little bit of there's one angle that feels really bad, and it's easy to get stuck there. And there's a bunch of angles that's a lot more normal.
So that's the basic presentation. Again, all the language is there in the packet. Plenty more pictures and from around the neighborhood, around Bloomington, and of the house. We're happy to entertain any questions. And we actually, and again, the neighbors were super helpful in going from the previous design, which we really liked, but we're happier to have some of the neighbors are on board with. And I'm sure they can speak to what they are and are not with the current design, so we'll shut up there.
All right, thank you, guys.
And we have one neighbor online, if they wanna chime in, they can, and we've got other neighbors here too, on
Perfect.
both sides.
Great,
Thanks,
thank
Gloria.
you, thank you. All right, let's do questions, and let's start with Chris.
I guess I would ask staff, how would we justify approving this with both the neighborhood guidelines and the Secretary of Interior guidelines?
Yeah, so the Secretary of the Interior guidelines and the neighborhood guidelines provide a guide of best practices, but another way to look at things is always take into consideration and give a lot of weight to the best practices. But at least something that I've learned and have always implemented is that every single case is unique. Every single building, every single lot has its own story, has its own development, and adds to the history of the space. So in a sense, you have to weigh whether the pros and the cons, how much is actually respecting the guidelines in terms of location. For example, it's not very visible from the road. It is visible from a right-of-way, but not the main right-of-way. Just take into consideration every single factor, line them up. What are the pros? What are the cons? There are a lot of precedents in the United States in different regions of historic districts having things that break with the norm, but not but being exceptions that sort of the exception that proves the rule rather than being the exception that creates sort of the spiral, that spirals out of control. So those are things to take into consideration. You can also make recommendations about materials and about additional changes that could bring it more into a space of So right now, this has been a process of negotiation so far up to this point. You have the option to add additional recommendations in terms of scale for materiality and say this is the COA we will approve if it's under these restrictions. You can also say, you know what, this is a very strange, different, quirky, but there is something to the spirit of the neighborhood, and this is the exception that proves the rule and not the first of 100 Gary-like ADUs. Then you also have the option to just say no, just no. So there are different ranges. The Secretary of the Interior Standards recommends and prefers that things be more stable and that they work in tandem with the community. But there are exceptions to that throughout the United States in different historic districts, and these are a very case-by-case type thing. I hope that helps.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Matthew?
I have no questions.
Ernesto?
Yes, I have a question for the petitioners. Do you think the collaboration that you guys have with the neighborhood association compromise any of your design intents?
I think the project is very different from where it was, that's very clear. I think in some ways it works better. I think it's a less bold statement.
Mhm.
I think that might be one of the requests of the process.
Mhm. But do you feel good about the end result?
Feel good enough.
Okay, fair enough.
Compromise.
Right. Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you, Ernesto. Daniel?
No, I don't have any questions right now.
Bernard?
Yeah, one of my main issues is with the proposed finishes. And this is an earthen material. And, you know, I tried to be fair, and I didn't recall seeing any buildings at all on the west side with an earthen finish.
Brick
So
is
I-
an earthen
Yes,
material.
brick would be a earthen material.
It's the same material.
Bricks are different.
Bricks are fired clay.
Yeah, but bricks are in small bits that you stack, and they have lines, and they're traditional, and
Obviously,
they're
there's earthen material in a lot of houses.
like this, not bricks, like what you're proposing.
I understand that.
Right. I know the type of finish. I've seen it before, right? In my home country, they do it a lot, but I've not seen it on anywhere on the west side of Bloomington in any kind of structure. Can you direct me to any
Yeah.
structure on the west side?
In your original packet, there was a series of images that show you.
How many?
Well, I think if you, let's look at the packet, if we can pull it
There are
out.
2 straw bales and there's one that's earthen.
And one
says
is-
not straw.
yeah.
Those
3.
The 2 straw bales are in Pigeon Hill, which is one neighborhood.
Right. How many Maple Heights? In the Maple Heights
This is
Historic
probably the
District.
first
Should be the original.
Okay, so you'd be proposing something that is new, not seen anywhere else in the historic district. Okay. All right.
Okay, Renee, thank you. Allison?
No, thank you.
Dan?
If it's all right with the chair, I would love to hear what the neighbors and the neighborhood committee has to say.
There's one neighbor online now, and there's some present.
Janelle?
Oh, give me 1 second, I need to get into Zoom and unmute. Okay, here we go.
And then I'll have a follow-up or two.
Exactly.
Hi, Janelle, you are unmuted.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. If you want to turn the video on, you can. I'm okay with that too. Yeah, so I've lived in my house 927 for 3 years now, and Danny's been a great neighbor. I've seen his work with Terran Robotics, either in studio space or at the mill when they had the big drone show, and I've just been so impressed about what he's done. And the interior of the house as well, we capped it sometimes, and we've been there for other events. Just beautiful work. I am super confident that the last design would have been fine. This design is great. I'm the main one who's gonna have to look at this, since I'm directly to the alley on the north. And I think it's gonna be a great addition to the neighborhood. And with your question about cob being a new material, that seems kind of weird to me since it's been used for a long, long time, and maybe some of these houses have it where we can't see it. And I'm all for whatever is sustainable and whatever is reusable, and I think Danny does a great job doing that kind of stuff. And I can't wait to see the finished product, and I hope you grant this whatever the language is. I approve, and I hope you do too.
All right.
And if you have any questions you want to ask me, that's fine too. I'm happy to answer.
All right, thank you, Janelle. Okay, we have members from the neighborhood here with us this evening, Lucy and Tom.
Yeah.
And anybody else?
Historic committee.
Okay.
Been involved in all 3 meetings, and as well as meeting Danny at the property. And it may be best if Lucy just read our summary findings.
I think we're scrambling a little here because in looking at the designs we were forwarded yesterday, they're a little different than what I'm seeing online. And you didn't have the planters in this one, so I didn't think they had manifested.
That was diagramming, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like, there's things that we're looking at to see how it aligns with the guidelines that maybe we've just seen.
But also in all 3 meetings, we have seen the final designs the day before.
It's been tricky to kind of process it. But so I think just from what we saw as of yesterday and not understanding, I don't think I fully understood that the small house was swapped out.
Yeah, that's confusing.
The materials weren't redefined. I feel like what we're looking at is a design of a funky little back house, but we're not talking about how it responds to the guidelines in terms of the review here. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of cool, it's got cob, it's doing all these other things, but our purview is to actually respond to the guidelines, the design, how it responds to the guidelines. So what we had written up was, we commend the petitioner on their creativity and commitment to sustainable building practices, but we are unable to recommend this project at this design phase due to the overwhelming, the foundation height is still there. That is a primary part of, in multiple spaces in our design guidelines where we talk about foundation height. The fenestration patterns, which seem to have changed a little bit, but are still on our don't list. And the overall building height still feels large to me, and the actual roof is also on the list described in the guidelines. It's flat, that's on the no-no list, and it represents the height that is the full height of the ridge line, even above the primary structure. So that was a concern. The efforts of the petitioner to adjust the height, you're saying 1 foot?
We came down 3.
3, that's what I had written down, 3 feet. Does not address the other concerns. The roof remains flat and representative of the highest point from all angles. It does not reflect the primary structure or the surrounding patterns. We didn't feel that maybe there was as much effort made as we had hoped to respond to the recommendations set forth in the guidelines before or after the walkthrough. The height was adjusted, but now I'm understanding that also the tiny house was adjusted. I did not, because again, I'm not an architect, but seeing it on there, it just looked like there was I didn't know it was a completely different structure. And I didn't have those photos of it. So we're operating on just kind of what the information that we had. We do understand that the petitioner has faced hardship in the execution of the process, and we hope that you all reach resolution with the city, but that's not something that's in our purview to address. That is something that has come up over and over again, as this has just been kind of a loop-de-loop process, and we have it built, what can we do now? But it seems like that is being put back on us to just take when we had guidelines in place when you purchased and started to build this. So we are unable to submit a favorable review at this time of this property because our current guidelines do not permit it, and the Secretary's standards either. So approval would represent, in the most important piece for us, a precedent that's incongruent with our guidelines and would affect the standards of future design review. And this is the first one, and we're gonna just kind of really throw them all out and just say this is what it is, and we shouldn't kind of look at the guidelines. So there are, I do have the guidelines here. If you've reviewed them as well, you can see some of the things that are in there. The flat roof, so on that page. This looks a lot like the entry from the alleyway. It's on clearly not responding to the guidelines there. And at the time, the window patterning was very much similar to this dumped on here. This is what our community drew up together over the course of a year. It's what we're incumbent to respond to. And I like Danny. You seem like a really nice guy. We have a very small district, but we were also contacted by 2 other neighbors who said they weren't as pleased as the adjacent neighbor, and so we're concerned about that. So that's our finding at this time.
Thank you.
Yeah, two neighbors we didn't document it the way these ones have been documented. Were far less than enthusiastic.
3.
Okay.
And as we did a walkthrough, and it was very interesting, but one thing I did notice was it was not a benign right-of-way, the alley. We met all the neighbors at a random time when we were there during the middle of the day. They were all there, and so it is important that it reflects this tight neighborhood that is bound together by alleys that is something that's important to our district as well as to the neighbors themselves.
Great. Thank you, Lucy. Any other members of the public want to give us a comment?
If anybody online wants
Well,
to.
we got one here, Laura. Yes.
I'm a resident of Maple Heights, but I don't know in the count that you listed whether you're including, I bought a tiny house property in Waterman that is cob, earthen cob as well, so I don't know if that's in your count. So the west side definitely has multiple cob and earthen structures. But yeah, I just wanted to express my enthusiastic support for the project. I do think it fits the eclectic character of the neighborhood. I appreciate the experimental dynamic. I would say that my experience of the long series of neighborhood association meetings that we had around the escalation of the conservation district to the historic district, that the overwhelming character of those discussions had to do with coping with the fact the neighborhood was forced to do that escalation by state statute, and that when we pursued writing these guidelines, it was to ensure flexibility within that historic district, given how many people would have really preferred seeing neighborhood goals furthered by a conservation district, but were uneasy with the escalation of the historic district. So I do think that spirit of flexibility and trying to honor what is historic about the district, but I've dealt in my home in Maple Heights with a lot of these same eccentric issues, the way that all the houses are cobbled together, not all, but many of them are. So I would just say that it really, to my mind, fits the character of the neighborhood and is also a kind of important experiment for Bloomington as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. We have one online.
I think Jenna already commented. Did Marlene comment online?
Marlene, we have.
Can I
we have,
follow-up
yeah,
questions?
It's actually Sam is
Oh, Sam?
next.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had two follow-up questions. One is materially, roof material, fascia material, soffit material. What are you thinking about doing?
The roof will be TPO, so white.
Okay.
The roof's already metal on the other one.
Okay.
Galvalume.
Gotcha.
And I did forget to put in the, you guys asked where this goes, the heating and cooling system will be to the south too, at the narrow part of the tiny home. And water comes on the north, sewer out on the, water on south, sewer out north. You did ask for that.
Okay.
And then what about the material outside?
Fascia and soffit.
Closed, probably just painted.
Painted, some kind of wood, clapboard, cement board, something.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question for legal. Do we have legal here?
Yeah.
Okay. So the petitioner was granted a building permit. How does that relate to our proceedings here? If the petitioner wanted to go ahead and build what they were permitted to build.
I was gonna say that might be more of a planning question than a legal question as to.
So yeah, so the building permit was issued without a certificate of appropriateness, which some might say is not the right way to do it. So now we're going through this process to try to do the right way to do it. This design has some differences with the approved certificate of zoning compliance, so that may need to be revised. However, everything that has been proposed tonight is compliant with the UDO. So we do not anticipate any, if this were to be, if the certificate of appropriateness were to be granted tonight, planning does not anticipate any trouble getting a revised CCC certificate of zoning compliance, if that's necessary.
I guess what I'm asking is.
I can speak to your question too, because I spoke to planning about this a couple times. It doesn't really matter. Like, you do have to do both processes still. The city should work together to solve this problem, because this is a real mess. And it should be, because I have a stack of things that were approved to get my building permit, planning, water, just put historic on there. Like, that has to happen. I'm not stupid and I messed this up. So it's gonna mess up a lot. And frankly, no one even knew I was building this for 5 months. It's like, I brought it here when I got a letter that was like, well, maybe they messed up. So yeah, there's no technicality. We need to vote. But my understanding is that doesn't get it now.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it? Okay. I haven't got any questions right now. Probably move to comments. So, Chris, let's go.
Marlene?
Oh, Marlene, I'm sorry.
I have two questions.
Yeah, please, I'm sorry.
So, if I look at these pictures correctly, the house that you own is, which we're responding to, is very eclectic, and it's a pastiche of art. It's a series of different buildings built at different times with different materials, and they're not actually, they don't actually match. That's what we're saying. So that's what gives it the eclectic thing. And the other thing that I'd like to say is that the roof on the brick structure to me appears to be pretty flat.
It's very low.
It appears to be a flat roof, and if I'm not mistaken, it would have a rolled roof on it, or
It does, black EPDM on that one and the back.
because the slope is too shallow for it to be a fixed roof. But so as the question, so then the question, those are two questions. The other question I had was then the absolute height from the location of the new building from its site elevation to the top of the roof meets the standard?
The building's 11 inches higher.
The building's 11 inches higher than
The main building, yeah. So it would be above that guideline.
That's not my question, though. My question is, what is the absolute height from sort of usually when you take a building height for.
Yeah. It's 11 inches plus grade change, but I don't know the exact grade change. Probably approximately 2 feet.
That's actually not the question either, because usually you take the elevation to compare with the rules and regulations, or whatever you want to call them, from the average slope of the place where the building is. So your new building is in a sloped area, so you usually cut the difference and then take the height from there. So at that point, it has to be below the absolute height allowed by is that true?
Yes, I'm not following completely, but it's 15 feet above grade, I believe.
Right.
If that's your question,
But-
because the planning department required 20, yeah.
Well, okay.
Sam's doing some quick calculations, it looks like.
Well, I'm just going to give you a drawing, which I think will help.
But yes, I believe you're correct, Marlene, that if you kind of were to draw an imaginary line of the grade going, what it looks like through the house, at the average point of that slope, and then take a reading, it would in fact be, then put on the same level as the house, it would be shorter than the house.
Okay, but shorter than whatever the maximum height is allowed in that neighborhood.
It definitely is that for sure. It's 5 feet shorter than that.
Yes, it's 5 feet.
Okay.
We're all in line with the UDO.
And to your point on the flat roofs, quite right. In fact, we saw that the neighborhood guidelines had a specification for no flat roofs, and yet when we look at the house that we are responding to, we see 2 flat roofs. As you walk around, they are of such a slope that they appear to be. So while those guidelines might be serviceable to the majority of the houses in the neighborhood, the one that we have been tasked to respond to, we felt that we had to respond to those flat roofs with a similar flat roof. And so we weren't trying to be willy-nilly and ignoring the guidelines. It's just our house was different than so many others.
Then the next question is that if you look at the Secretary of the Interior standards, that's mostly designed to comment about a particular building and the building as it sits in time and within itself, whereas the neighborhood guidelines respond to a neighborhood. So in order for you to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards, you have to respond to your building. And so these two things themselves are not necessarily copacetic. They aren't really. And so that's kind of an issue. Period. So the question is, how would you do that, you know?
We did the best
In
we-
my opinion, you can't really respond to both of you.
We thought we tried, that's exactly how we felt, that there are these mutually exclusive goals that we had to accommodate. And we tried to both respond overall to the neighborhood in terms of, you know, kind of a mismatch of roof lines or kind of intersecting roof lines. We went around the town, you'll see it in your packet. But then, and then the materiality specifically related to the 5 materials that exist on the exterior of the historic house. We tried to play them specifically to the house we built, and what roof lines interact with what. We pulled from the direct house. So we tried to pull from both the neighborhood and the specific house and split the difference. And much like our compromise, like any compromise, in certain areas, one kind of played more heavily, in other areas of the design, the other, so.
So I have one final question, and the question is, I noticed in the packet that you have multiple colors for the cob, right? Did those colors pick up, or were any of those picked up from the brick? Or could you, you know, sort of respond to with the vocabulary that's inherent in the house by...
It's difficult to control the color. Based on,
you pick up the colors of the brick, you know, you pick up the colors of the bricks that are in the front of the house, and they become part, so your eye kind of joins the two parts.
Indeed.
If you think about the color, and I suppose that would be some way to ameliorate the problem that Renard has about.
So yeah, it would be possible to source like a higher iron oxide clay, which would be in the redder spectrum. It's not going to be as vibrant as like a fired clay brick, but yeah, you could definitely play to that.
Indiana clay tends towards red anyway. In fact, these pictures are taken from locally sourced clay that we built a test wall with. And if you look at the pictures of the exterior of the house, the part that's brick at least, you'll see a variety of colors, but a dominant one is a reddish hue. So there would be a warm relationship between those two.
Okay, that's the final. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Marlene. Did you have another?
Yeah, I just wanted to say on our walk around, whatever it looks like on the paper, it's certainly not a flat roof house. You definitely get a perception of a grade to the roof, and then it cuts down in several different little additions and side areas. That is one thing we did discuss. I think glossing over it to say that it's practically flat roof, it appears flat roof, it's not. It's
It's a shallow pitch.
Shallow pitch. It's a shallow
We have
pitch.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alicia, for pointing that out. Okay, let's now move back to comments. Chris?
Well, I would assume that we're gonna have legal findings for this decision, since it is a precedent-setting decision. So those should be clear, and those should be able to be referred to if someone else decides to put a trailer on a 10-foot foundation in their backyard. This tiny house was required to be on a foundation by planning, and I think that started the ball rolling. And I'm just suggesting that we think about the precedent we're setting. And
Can I ask a point of clarification, because it was confusing to me as well, I think someone else mentioned it.
Yes, please.
You're not talking about this, are you?
That was the old design.
The trailer with the wheel?
Yeah, they have a new one with
They have a new
wheels that
tiny
they're
house.
gonna put in place.
But it's still a tiny house.
It's still stick-built, same house.
I know, I just want to make sure I understand, because
There's no wheels that are going to be left on it. It'll be
No, it's going on the foundation.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I understood what was happening. Maybe I don't.
All right, Chris?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's truthful that the design guidelines never conceived of anything like this. It would be wonderful maybe in another situation as far as being compatible. I see it as largely incompatible, but maybe there are ways to justify doing this. And that's not my department.
Thank you, Chris. Matthew?
Yeah, well, this one is clearly a challenge in terms of divergent opinions, and it's going to really kind of come down to a judgment call, and I've heard good arguments on all sides. I'm particularly impressed with the petitioner's strong efforts to talk with the community, to make adjustments, to listen. And this is one of the tougher calls that I've seen. I'm impressed with the efforts to adjust. I'm impressed with the efforts to be open to changes, and so that counts for a lot for me. I think, my overall feeling, where I am landing, is that this falls into eclectic enough to meet the general overall sort of diversity of the neighborhood. I totally agree. This one is there's a lot of guidelines that it's not falling under, but there are other guidelines it is falling under. And I usually weigh heavily the view from the street. I understand what you're saying about the alley, and the alley being important, but I have generally weighted things in terms of how is this going to affect the street view. In many other cases, I tend to just sort of say, if it's not really disrupting the street view, I'm not too terribly perturbed. I liked all of you guys did a really careful job. There's one little spot where you catch a corner of it. So honestly, it's tough, but I can support this as fitting enough of the guidelines and fitting the eclectic neighborhood that I don't think it's going to be something that's the end of the integrity of the neighborhood in any way, shape, or form, and that's what makes me comfortable. But certainly, other reasonable, smart people can disagree. That's true.
Ernesto?
Thank you, John. I'm glad to see that you guys made the effort to cooperate and collaborate with the neighborhood association. My first reaction when I saw it first was the scale of the project, and I see that you guys work hard on trying to minimize the size, the height of it. That's why I addressed the question about the height. And yes, recognize that the existing house was designed very shallow, so it's hard to fight that, right? I mean, it's very shallow. You can't make your new building try to fight that shallow, right? So I do like the idea of incorporating natural features as some kind of vines. The building is sitting in the back, and the alley is part of it. I like the new technology that you guys are implementing. If this was back then, when the neighborhood had started, this would be part of this eclecticness of the technology that would have been implemented. So you guys are improving on that. The neighborhood it just calls for that. So we have to remember it is an ADU. It's promoting other great ideas. We're talking about affordable housing and many different factors too. So I think it's a good project in my mind. That's all I have to say.
Daniel?
I think it's a unique project. I think it's come a long way since the first one. I thought it was very interesting to hear from the members of the neighborhood commission that definitely cast a whole new light on things for me. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, it's right on that edge. I can kind of go either way depending on hearing what some of the other commissioners have said. I'm like, it's got good points, and so I'm still kind of weighing things out.
You're persuaded.
First, I spent a fair amount of time on British Navy ships as a young man, and the head height has not changed. It's still a steel coffin. I will tell you that, right? When it pitches, you still want to run for a really tiny window. Eclectic. Deriving ideas, style, and taste from a broad and diverse range of sources. I hear that term coming up a lot, that the neighborhood is eclectic, and so it justifies having this eclectic structure put there. And I have a problem with that. Firstly, you'd be saying that all structures, because they're considered eclectic, can fit in the same space. Eclectic has no real pattern. Its characteristics and design features are drawn from many different sources. So two buildings can be eclectic and completely different. Eclectic is not a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a pattern, it's not a character, it's not something that binds a neighborhood together in the way the spirit of a historic designation is intended to bind that neighborhood together. Right? You know, the comment was made that it had more features than none. You know, it's like saying in a room full of dogs, I could throw in a giraffe because they have 4 legs, fur, and discount the fact that one doesn't bark or eat meat. Because, you know, those are just 2 things that are different, but they have more things in common. No one would agree that a giraffe belongs in the same box with it, you know, with a German Shepherd and a Rottweiler. It doesn't happen, right? We've seen the presentation from the persons from the design committee who went through in great detail to explain how this structure does not fit. Right? We've seen it, and I like the building, I really do, but I don't think it fits in this neighborhood. I haven't heard one thing that says it fits in this neighborhood. I walk these streets. No, that sounds bad. Almost sounds. You know, I've been around the neighborhood. I live one street over. Right, I drive down Fairview a lot. I use the alleys either when I'm walking or driving, and my perspective of that ADU from the street is somewhat different from what I see in the diagrams. Right. Firstly, I see trees in the diagrams, and there are no trees, or certainly none that size. As I approach the house and the alley comes more and more into view, you know, the wall that's there now is conspicuous in a very conspicuous way. And then to imagine what that feature is going to look like from that same perspective, you know, it's elevated, which means that, you know, you can probably see it over the tops of other buildings that are, you know, I cannot, if I am to be, I'm trying to, you know, even if I look at it slanted, you know, dim the lights, you know, try to give my most liberal interpretation of the guidelines, I still can't see how this building fits. You know, there's no other building in the neighborhood that has this what's it called? This type of siding. None. So how do we justify that? By saying it's eclectic? Well, you could have made it with glass or bamboo or thatch. That would also be eclectic, but we'd all agree that that would not be appropriate. Right? I hear sustainability coming up, and I'm a champion for sustainability, but there are also ways of finding sustainable materials that fit, you know, more easily within the character of the neighborhood. You could have reclaimed wood siding. You could use any other kind of sustainable materials. So the principles that are being that the builders are trying to adhere to are noble principles. I agree with them 100%. But in these principles manifest must be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. It must be honest to the and ingenuous to the spirit in which the regulations were there. And I'm thinking that we're trying very hard to find loopholes to justify this building rather than being honest to the guidelines that the people in the neighborhood created. It is not being honest to the spirit of the guidelines, and I cannot support it.
Thank you.
Oh, Maynard. Darn it, I was decided and now I'm not. Thanks a lot. Yeah, no, this is a difficult one. I was prone to say that Father Matthew had the right idea on this one, but I need to think about what Reynard just said and vote when the time comes. I want to hear from everybody else.
Sam.
I'm trying to find, I just lost my page. I'm looking through we're in Maple Heights, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the accessory structure guidelines. I guess they come right after sustainability. I turned the page, I made a mistake, but I want to read a bit of that. Here we go. So the accessory structure guidelines are somewhat different than the primary structure guidelines in Maple Heights, in the Maple Heights guidelines, how they're laid out. I'm going to read some things that's, stuck me. When designing a new accessory building, such as a garage or storage building, the context to which the designer must relate is usually defined by the existing buildings on the site. So all this talk about it being a part of the neighborhood, the more, according to the guidelines, the higher standard, or the more prevalent standard, is its relation to the existing buildings on the site. But then it goes on to say, for the most part, the guidelines pertaining to new construction of primary structures are applicable to accessory buildings as long as it is remembered that there's always a closer and more direct relationship with an existing building in this case. Blah, 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 blah. So every time something comes before the commission, I like to pay a lot of attention to what the neighborhood wants and what the guidelines say. And, I beat that dead horse as often as I can. My architect hat on, I love this project. It is incredibly well proportioned. It works in a number of different ways for me. It increases density, it's very sustainable. With the settlement pattern, it works in that way for me. The massing of the building, its relationship to the existing structure, I've got no issues with any of that. I want to reiterate some of the things that my fellow commissioners have said, and that I really appreciate the petitioner and how much they've worked with the neighborhood and tried to address a lot of their concerns. It feels to me like the neighborhood is split. There's the commission, the design review committee has issues. The immediate neighbors adjacent to the property love this project. And so that's wrenching, right? It's like, but I found also, I didn't remember your name, sir, but one of the residents of the neighborhood who talked about the process by which you became an historic district. It was involuntary. And I've been going through the writing of guidelines with multiple neighborhoods. And one of the things I've tried to convey is you have to be really careful what you put in your guidelines because of situations like this. And I would, I like guidelines that are like neighborhood or historic district light, especially on conservation districts that are elevated. And these guidelines are more strict than a lot of other ones like Prospect Hill it feels a little more strict, but especially like McDowell, and yeah, who's sitting behind you guys. We'll hopefully get to you guys before we all fall asleep. But so it's wrenching. I love this project. I would love to support it. I think the only thing that I find a little bit of a stretch is the flat roof. And also the other thing I wanted to address was the cob. Cob is basically, it appears as plaster or stucco from the exterior. It's not, I mean, it's a very old material, and I don't think it's as foreign as my fellow commissioner might think it is, but we're both very opinionated people. Well, okay, at least one of us is very opinionated. But we seem to get on okay. I am torn about this one, but I am leaning towards it, and that's kind of where I am.
Marlene? Comments?
Okay, so I think that if you looked at the existing house, you would say that that could not be built in the neighborhood. It's a building that matches some classical or historical vocabulary with a modern vocabulary. And when you read the Secretary of the Interior standards, it talks about the fact that districts and neighborhoods and cities and streets should not be static. And they should incorporate new technologies and new vocabularies. Otherwise we would have, some other kind of building that we would not see, even Palladium did things like that, changed, from Gothic to classical in some of his buildings, and that was a real. But so when you talk about what is this? Is it maybe you don't want to use the word eclectic, though I think it is seriously an eclectic project, both the existing building and the building that is responding to it. And I think in that way, it's a great thing. It could be vernacular, which is very vernacular, because I don't think any architect actually took that brick building and stuck it onto the more classical building. And so in that respect, I think that the new building responds to that. I agree with Sam that it's an ancillary building, and it's to respond to the building that it's on its site and that it's associated with. The only thing, I think it's just a great project, and I would support it.
Thank you, Marlene. Yes, actually, I do like this. I like this project, and I think that we need to have diversity in the neighborhoods. This may not fit in, but who knows, in 30 years, 40 years, what people will see and think about it then, that this is something that was good for this neighborhood. So I personally would support this project. So that's my comment. So we need a motion.
Move to approve COA 23-29.
Second.
Got it. All right, Dee, let's do the roll call.
Marlene Newman,
Yes.
Daniel Slagle,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Matthew Sutton,
Yes?
John Saunders,
Yes.
Allison Chopra,
Yes.
Bernard Cross,
No.
motion carried.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Daniel.
Would it be okay to make a quick comment? I'll be very quick. Because now as an architect or petitioner, or maybe it's not allowed. I'll go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was a professor of political science for a decade. And one thing I've noticed on this body, having been here a lot, is that there's often a fidelity to enforce rules, when in fact, the historical reason you have bodies like this is to adjudicate when rules ought to be relaxed, because you don't need humans to enforce rules. Anybody can, any machine can do that. So I would just encourage you to feel more empowered as commissioners. You are not some machine to be enforcing guidelines, but it is your job to adjudicate when and which rules are worth following, and that's all I have to say, just as a political scientist.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'll
Thank
shut
you.
up.
Thank you, Dan.
If I may respond as a lifelong civil servant.
Fair enough, yeah.
I strongly disagree.
Fair enough.
You do need people to enforce rules and enforce standards,
Yeah.
or what you have is chaos. And that's why there's usually a healthy, robust civil service preventing politicians from acquiescing to their greater demons.
Thank you, Ronald.
Thank you.
Well put.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Lucy.
Can I say something?
All right.
Marlene
Okay.
wants to comment something?
Yeah, Marlene.
Can everybody?
I think we did, I think we did, all of the, and so, you know, I think we did.
Some of them are
we did a good
judgment
job.
calls.
Yes, I agree.
What I
I
like
agree with
with
Marlene.
We could disagree.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let's, we've got,
They're good actors.
we have one left.
I'll just stay for that.
We have some bad.
Yeah, we have
But
one
we
left.
also have 5 commissioners in person.
Yeah, we do.
I'm
So-
here, if it's just one.
Yeah,
we're
we
good.
just have Linda to get through.
I don't want it to seem like because I lost, I
so
just took up my marbles and went home. So it's.
We got one more, that's what we're talking about, we're waiting for you.
Yeah, you can go. I'm now forced to stay.
You can go. I wouldn't take it that way, Bernard.
It's not about you, it's about
I know, I get it, I get it.
the video.
You-
Oh, Renard is a bad sport. He lost this one. Now he's just
All right,
taking up
guys,
his marbles and
let's,
going
we have one petition left to deal with.
Nah,
Let's
there's-
move on and get it over with. Because our petitioner, this is her second time here. So let's move forward. We're gonna do COA 23-31, 1108 South Madison Street. This is McDowell Gardens, and our petitioner's with us. Okay, Gloria.
Yes, give me 1 second. Let me
To remind.
switch to shared content. Okay. So this is our second certificate of appropriateness petition for today for COA 23-31 at 1108 South Madison Street. The petitioner, Linda Napier, is requesting to build a new detached garage. I was gonna comment the neighborhood comments, but we have the neighborhood neighbors here. So the staff recommends approval of COA 23-31. The proposed garage would have horizontal siding, so that's something important when we look at the images. It would fit 2 cars and be overall compatible in scale, material, and roof pitch with the surrounding structures. And in fact, it is using another built structure. Sorry, I'm just gonna scroll very slowly. These are the images of the site. So bear with me. I just want to make sure people don't get very dizzy. So this is post layout. And the location of the garage with relationship to the site. So it'd be towards the back. And here, it's a prefabricated structure. The image is a little grainy, but it does says horizontal cement board siding, or technically siding, cement board, horizontal. But this would be the form, and this is the precedent of how it will look like. So this is an existing structure in the neighborhood, and here are the materials: 6x6 posts, 2x4s, concrete floor, a door, 1 window, metal roof, metal screws, etc. Along with,
There's no window.
there's no window?
Yeah, I see
Okay.
that X'd out, yeah.
Yeah,
There's no
okay.
window.
Yes, okay. Thank you for clarifying. And I'm just gonna pull up, because this is the image we have. Sorry, I need to, let me. So, let me just use Elevate instead. It's a little better for this. So, just to get a better idea of where it would be situated, 1108 South Madison. So it would be located to the west by the alleyway, behind the house, you can see here. So just wanted to make sure that this could translate to something a bit more visual. The map that was provided could translate to something more visual. And with that, I leave it to the commission.
All right. Linda, do you have anything you want to add?
I just want to add that it is going to be a one-car garage with a carport. So I'm pouring a 22-foot by 24-foot pad with a 12-foot by 24 garage with a carport adjacent to it, okay? There's going to be work done in our alley. The city has contacted me and said that they're going to regrade. I don't know if that means I'm going to get paved or not, but that's going to depend as to whether I'm going to have a gravel driveway or not. It will have cement siding, 612 pitch, roof line matches my house. It'll have a red metal roof that matches my house. You can't see that in that because that's a really old picture of my house. It's changed considerably since that picture was taken. So it'll be really attractive. It'll be a real asset to the area. So, and the primary reason why I want to build it, I want to get an electric car. I don't want my things tampered with anymore. And so this is a direction that I have to go first. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, let's do questions.
Do you want the neighborhood comments?
Well, all right.
Well, since I'm one of the ones who wrote our guidelines, it fits our guidelines with roof pitch and materials. And since we were originally, in fact, Bloomington's very first historic conservation district, and then we were elevated beyond our control in 2014 to historic, we are technically historic light. And this structure sits in the back. Now, yes, it's visible by alley, but it's not necessarily visible from the main thoroughfares. And so our neighborhood approved it. We see no problem with it. And for one thing, as a female, as Linda is, we have quite a bit of the homeless that wander about, and we don't want to encourage with windows them breaking in and deciding to reside there where they could potentially attack us.
Yes. Right.
I mean, I had something replaced on my property, and we did not put windows on there on purpose. So, you know, I wanted to just make sure that you don't try to impose windows for Linda.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right. Questions, Chris?
Just, what is the siding actually? Are those,
It's cement. It's going to be cement siding.
but the picture shows something like 4-inch grooves in the siding?
That's my builder provided that. I didn't provide that. My builder is steel construction, and that's what they had to work with. That had that kind of the lean-to carport on it. But if you look at the pictures that are of an existing single-car garage with the carport, that's over just off of Palmer. And I guess I think it's Allen or Dodds that comes through there. But anyway, I took those pictures, and that's what I want to build.
Right, that's horizontal siding.
Yes, and that's what I want to put on.
Okay,
It
so those
matches
vertical
the-
lines
it'll
don't
match-
mean anything?
No, that's why it says horizontal on there.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
do you know what, is it gonna be that wide, or are they
It's
gonna be
gonna
4
match,
inch?
it's gonna match the profile on my house.
Which is probably 4 inch.
Yeah.
Great, Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Matthew?
No questions.
No questions, Jim.
Daniel stepped off for a minute. Bernard?
If you want a window, I'll give you a window. You sure? Okay.
No.
No more questions.
Do you have any statistics about homeless people attacking women?
Not no.
Okay,
It doesn't
I just
have
wanna
anything
make sure
big.
because I
Who's
think that
up
might be a
next door?
misconception.
No, but
Somebody
we have,
had a machete.
but we have people wondering, and I've had people living in the back because
I just
there
wanted
is
to
a
make
lot
sure
of
that we
overgrowth.
are questioning our beliefs and making sure that what we're fearful of is something we need to be fearful of.
No, that wasn't even to be implied, other than the fact I am.
At any rate.
I live by myself, so.
I did want to ask about this gray structure.
It's a shed.
Will that remain?
Yes.
Okay, one second, let me look at it again. Oh, that's a but that is on your property, okay.
Of course.
Okay, I couldn't tell from this picture, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And eventually I would like to, in probably 2 years, I would like to screen in the carport side and put windows in and make that like a four-season room off my deck and into my garage area. So I can actually have a grill that I get to keep, and my son can keep his bicycles and I can sit out there.
May I ask staff a question?
Sure.
How does the suggested accessory unit play with this shed? Does it, I mean,
So we're
is there anything that we need to consider with the shed being on the property?
Do you mean legally as to the amount of structures? I feel that's almost a planning question.
Sure. Any staff member can answer.
So, from the UDO point of view, this is in the residential small lot zoning district, R3. Up to 2 accessory structures are allowed, and the total square footage between the 2 is allowed to be up to 580 square feet.
And what is this?
I was just trying to look that up. Trying to, what is proposed here. I'll just jump in and say.
288 is the garage.
288 is the existing one?
That was the
It's a
proposed
garage.
one. And that little one's
It's
gonna be
even
about.
smaller, yeah.
40.
Shed is 8
Yeah.
by 10.
Yeah,
It
so
shouldn't be.
It's gonna be way under. under. It's
Okay,
gonna be way
I
under.
just, I appreciate
Shed
that.
is eclectic.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Put the gamma over
Yeah,
I mean, I obviously, yeah,
Couldn't
yeah.
help it.
I think that the garage is
great, Chris.
I'll comment
Okay.
later.
Daniel, did you have any questions?
I do not. No.
Okay, perfect. Sam?
No questions.
I don't have any questions. Let's move to Marlene.
Any questions either?
All right. Thanks. Chris, comments?
Looks fine to me.
Okay. Matthew?
Same, looks fine to me.
Yeah, looks great. Ernesto? Looks great, yeah. Good. Bernard?
I'm good.
Allison?
I think it's appropriate.
Okay. Sam?
I think it's great. I only want to address the homeless thing. My mother-in-law also lives in this neighborhood and can attest that there is a large presence of homeless folk there, especially people in need of, they're going through.
I'm asking
drug-
about attacking women specifically.
Okay, but I was just trying to address the presence of sometimes aggressive homeless people in the neighborhood, and whether or not people get attacked. There are elderly people in the neighborhood who do feel threatened by them.
I've had people sleep on my front porch.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that.
And I leave them alone.
All right, well, I'll get some statistics.
Okay.
I don't think it
have
happens
any,
that much.
I don't have
I've
any
had
questions.
issues with one guy who was living in our neighbor across the alley, and he would get very aggressive with me, verbally aggressive, to the point of every time I would walk out while my contractor was working on our shed, I had the phone with the number ready to dial for the police. And it turns out he robbed a judge, and he has all of these other things, but he was very aggressive. Now, no, he didn't hit me, but I was threatened.
That's very good. Thank you for making that point, something we need to be aware of. Very good. Yep, yep,
proposal?
yep, we need a proposal.
Is Marlene gonna comment?
Yeah, Marlene,
No
yeah,
comment.
Marlene,
Marlene,
yeah, she's good.
He has no comments, and I kinda like the idea of having that screened in at the front, I don't, I like the way it looks. I certainly know that the mosquitoes in Bloomington are voracious, so.
Like that.
I move to approve COA 2331.
Second.
All right, D, let's do the roll call.
Marlene Newman,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSauer,
Yes.
Matthew Sutton,
Yes.
Don Saunders,
Yes.
Allison Treffler,
Yes.
Bernard Cross.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, build it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll drive by and look at it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bernard, you have to go?
Yes.
All right, go. Actually, we don't have anything on demolition delay. 'Cause that's been moved. I don't see anything in our old business. Do we have any commission comments? Okay. Public is left. Do we have any public comments? Okay.
Well,
bef-
if I could be staff
before-
No.
No.
You can't be public, but we'll allow you to
But
speak.
Before we adjourn, we want to bring up
Yeah.
tomorrow night's presentation by Duncan about Nancy Hiller. And I hope everybody can attend this. I think it'll be very exciting to hear Duncan talk about Nancy. And of course, Gloria.
Yeah, so yeah, that was exactly what I was gonna say, so,
Okay.
thank you very much,
I'm
John.
actually excited about this.
Yes, so we are reviving the Rosemary Miller lecture series, which had been interrupted by the pandemic. And this is the first time that I'm programming this, so I'm grateful to everybody's help and patience throughout the process. Hopefully, we will be able to bring many community members to honor Nancy Hiller's legacy and know a bit more about what a preservationist, woodworker, editor, and ethicist. That part I'm very curious to learn a bit more about her impact and legacy in Bloomington's landscape, both the physical landscape, but also our community as a whole. So thanks.
All right,
Thank
okay.
you for organizing.
Yeah, all right, so we're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.